Part 3, Chapter 3 of Short History of the Christian Church by John Fletcher Hurst. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 3, The Reformatory Councils. The Councils of Pisa, Constance, and Basel were formal acknowledgments, on the part of the Roman Catholic Church, of the evils within its pale and the necessity of relief from them. The 14th century opened with a bitter controversy between the Church and the leading civil rulers. It was the old question of authority — whether pope or king was the supreme head. The struggle centered in Pope Boniface VIII. And Philip the Fair of France. In a bull issued in 1302, Boniface condemned Philip's declaration that the civil ruler is independent of papal authority. Thereupon Philip caused the arrest of the pope, on the ground of his shameless life. The pope was rescued, however, by his Italian supporters, and died shortly afterwards. His successor lived but a short time, and in 1305 the French Archbishop of Bordeaux was chosen pope, and bore the name of Clement V. He was thoroughly identified with the French policy, and in 1309 removed the papal see from Rome to Avignon, in France. This was the beginning of the Avignon papacy, popularly called by the Romanists the Babylonian captivity, from the light in which it was held as an ecclesiastical calamity, and from its continuance of nearly 70 years, 1309 to 1377. The whole period was one of great spiritual decline. At no time have the morals of the papacy been at a lower ebb. Meanwhile, the German rulers came into angry collision with the popes. Ludwig of Bavaria was a bitter opponent of the chains of the papacy. In Rome, and even throughout Italy, the divisions were very violent, and the whole papal structure was threatened with destruction. Gregory XI. Put an end to the Avignon papacy in 1377. Immediately after his death, the Romans elected an Italian pope, but the French elected a pope of their own, who resided in Avignon. There were, therefore, two popes, one in Rome and another in France, each claiming the supreme authority, and each surrounded with his court and a college of cardinals. This papal schism lasted 30 years. Its effects were widespread, the entire Roman Catholic world being drawn into the strife. The only possible relief seemed to lie in a general council. The Paris theologians, with Gerson in the lead, were the principal agents in securing it. This council convened in Pisa in the year 1409. The rival popes were summoned to attend it, in order to have their competing claims adjusted. Each feared for his position, and both refused to attend. Another pope was accordingly chosen, Alexander V. There were, therefore, at this time, 3 rival popes, all regularly elected, all claiming infallibility as the Lord's anointed vice-regents, and each fulminating maledictions upon his rivals and their supporters. The Council of Pisa failed of its end, for it was wrested from its original intent, that of reforming the Church and healing its dissensions, into a contest of parties. The Council of Constance, 1414 to 18, was called to heal the scandal of the three-headed papacy, which still continued, and to bring about reforms. All the 3 popes were called to the council, but only John XXIII., the successor of Alexander V., responded. John was a dissipated and accomplished rascal, but shrewd and full of makeshifts. He hoped to win his point by filling the council with Italians, but the council resolved to vote by nations, each nation having but 1 vote. Through the influence of D'Ailly, the decision was reached that all 3 popes should be compelled to abdicate, and that a new election take place. This program was carried out, and on November 11th, 1417, Odo Colonna was elected as Martin V. This council is famous for the passing the decree that an ecumenical council, rightly constituted, has its authority immediately from Christ, and that therefore even the pope himself is subject to it. It was also famous, or rather infamous, for condemning Huss to death. In the face of D'Ailly's and Gerson's hopes for reform, Martin, with true ecclesiastical prudence, prorogued the council. The Council of Basel, 1431 49, was convened by Martin's successor, Eugene IV. It took the Constance program of reform as its basis of operations, and aimed at a thorough regeneration of the Church, from its papal head to the secular clergy. The pope was alarmed at the persistency and depth of the reformatory spirit, and declared the council dissolved, and called another, first at Ferrara and then at Florence. But the Basel Council would not break up, even with the disadvantage of a rival council and the absent pope. The pope therefore issued his ban against the council, whereupon the latter removed the pope and elected a new one, Felix V., in his stead. But the disadvantages were too great for the Basel delegates to resist. They lacked cohesion, and too many of them were open to overtures from Rome. One by one its members slipped off, and in time it was compelled to cease for lack of numbers. It performed, however, an immense service. Its place of session, just across the Rhine from Germany, made it an object of profound attention throughout the freer Europe north of the Alps, while the evils which the council labored in vain to remove became more than ever a source of sorrow and of heroism in dealing with the universal spiritual declension. All these three councils failed of their prime object, but they revealed to the world the fact that no prospect for reform could exist in any new council. The only way open for improvement was now clear — the independence of the individual reformer. The personal conscience was compelled to fight, with single lance, for the revival of truth and virtue. It was the hour when the fate of modern times depended on the one man. End of chapter 2.